All right, folks, the FOMC announcing no rate cuts and no hikes. In a moment, of course, Jay Powell, he will hold the live press conference. Wall Street hanging on every word. Markets, of course, hanging on every word. They will react. But it's Main Street that really is in a no-win situation, perhaps. Think about this. Jay Powell will end his prepared remarks with this statement. He always does it. Our success in delivering these goals matters to all Americans. We understand that our actions affect communities, families, and businesses across the country. Everything we do is in service to our public mission. We at the Fed will do everything we can to achieve our maximum employment and price stability goals. Thank you, and look forward to your questions. All right, well, higher rates. Guess what? They've only helped corporations. Look at this. Corporations' net payments down in that orange line. But you and I, as taxpayers, we're paying $1 trillion a year on the debt that the government has. Huge dividends are going to all these rich folks, and they keep buying things. And if you're an investor, well, think about this. The world's greatest investor out there ever, Warren Buffett, is sitting on the most cash he's ever had ever, $352 billion. Why isn't the greatest investor in the world investing? He doesn't have to. He's making tens of billions of dollars from higher interest rates. But those high interest rates, they haven't brought down home or auto insurance. They haven't brought down rents. Oh, by the way, egg prices through the roof. Coffee prices through the roof. There's nothing the Fed can do about this. So I say maybe we should think about retooling the creature from Jekyll Island. I'm talking a drastic, dramatic dismantling, and then put it back together with Main Street as the focus, not banks or the ultra wealthy. Now, my next guest has introduced and reintroduced a bill to audit the Fed. So let's bring in Republican Senator from Kentucky, Rand Paul. Senator Paul, thanks for joining.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So am I going too far saying maybe blow the whole thing up and put it back together?
Well, the thing is it's funny how conservatives are worried about prices, and we know that price controls are bad. If you put the price of bread or the price of eggs too high or too low, you cause shortages, or you cause scarcity of goods, or you cause surplus. Same with money. If the government sets the price of money, but many conservatives sort of lapse there and they say, well, we need the Federal Reserve to set the price of money or interest rates. And in reality, probably interest rates are more important than any other price in the marketplace because they're so diffusely attributable to everything we do in the marketplace. And that's why I think we should have less Fed involvement in this. But when you talk about, high interest rates, I think the one thing, if you talk about real interest rates now, interest, minus the inflation rate, I think you're still talking about relatively low, if not negative interest rates. And there is a boom and an inflationary pressure from all this new money is in the marketplace. So there's a question whether the marketplace is overbid. But things don't correct as well as they would as if the interest rates were freely fluctuating. So if interest rates were allowed to rise and fall without intervention from the Fed, I think what you'd get is a quicker correction, but less of a bubble, but also less of a burst when it finally bursts.
So if there was the ability for Congress or some other branch of government to actually audit the Fed, what would they be able to do with the findings?
Well, it would be a look back, so it wouldn't be like, simultaneous to the, 24-hour cycle. So I don't think it would disturb investments or affect investments, but we'd be looking back over the previous year. We would know what the Fed owns. I'd like to know, does the Fed buy used car loans? Does the Fed buy, bonds that are not of value? What kind of things does the Fed own? The Fed owns what, $9 trillion worth of stuff. What is included in the Fed's portfolio? We need to know more precisely, and we do need to know. Once upon a time the dollar was backed by gold. Now the dollar is backed by debt. But what is that debt comprised of? AAA, AA, single A, double D. What is the kind of debt that the Fed owns? And I don't think we know as precisely as we could as if we were to get a Fed audit.
I want to ask you about the administration and President Trump kicking up a hornet's nest. Of course, ordering the federal workers back and, hey, if you don't want to come back, we'll buy you out. I love the idea, particularly because it seems like the media hates it. What are your thoughts?
We have a $2 trillion deficit annually. We need to do everything. We need to throw everything at the problem, everything and anything the president could do to try to downsize government. He should. The opposite extreme happened under Biden. They started signing contracts to try to have 5-year contracts to prevent them from being fired and to prevent them from coming back to work. So everything they can possibly do to reduce the size and scope of government, we have to do. But they're going to have to do that and some, because realize 2/3 of spending is entitlements, and nobody's yet talking about entitlements. 1/3 of the government we vote on in the budget is called discretionary. Half of that's military, and all the hawks in my caucus are trying to bust the budget on military right now. So we have no work on entitlements, busting the budget on military. There's only 16% of the budget they're looking at, and it's not enough to get anywhere near balancing the budget. So I'm for doing more. I'm for looking at every dollar spent, and anything they can do that's disruptive, go on and do it. We got to try to reduce the federal workforce.
I want to ask you quickly about DeepSeek. I know you're a big fan of competition. You don't like a lot of meddling, but it feels like there's some shenanigans. Word out moments ago that maybe the Trump administration will restrict some additional sales from NVIDIA. How would you handle a situation like that?
Laissez-faire. Leave them alone. Leave all contracts alone. Don't tell Nippon Steel they can't buy U.S. Steel. It's none of the business of government. Don't tell JetBlue they can't merge with Spirit, because guess what? Spirit went bankrupt and 13,000 jobs were lost. I don't want to see that happen to U.S. Steel. I don't want to see the government involved in transactions or mergers. The only antitrust or merger action that should ever occur is if you have proof that a merger has caused, not will cause, but has caused manipulation of the price where the consumer is losing, the consumer model. Big is not bad, and rarely, if ever, can you prove that a company actually controls price in an upward fashion. So I say laissez-faire. Let's get the government out of business.
All right. Senator Paul, thank you so much. Always appreciate when you come on, especially on Fed Day. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.